everyone, welcome back to this channel, and in this video I'll be discussing what the government has done to reduce unemployment from the demand side, and I will tell you what that means in a bit. My name is Wanjiku. I'm the founder of Wanjiku's Eye, and here I discuss the relationship between economic development and governance so that you can understand, engage and influence the matters that affect you and I. Welcome to Wanjiku's Eye. Now, when we talk about the demand side of fixing unemployment, this refers to the interventions by the government to make sure that the economy absorbs people into jobs. So such interventions could look like designing policies or projects that demand for labor. Now, the previous video was about how to make you as the labor or as a job seeker more attractive in the labor market. But now here the question is, after the people have the skills or while they get the skills, how do we make sure that we have job opportunities? How do we ensure the economy is generating enough jobs both in the public sector and the private sector to absorb all these people who are going to school and getting certificates and degrees? So one way that the government does this is by coming up with projects and programs that will require a lot of labor. So one popular example of such a project is the affordable housing program. So just a summary, the government has intervened in the housing market to stimulate demand. How? They know that there is a need for decent housing, especially for the low-income earners. So that model looks something like this. The government collects the housing levy, then they have an agreement with real estate developers to construct houses. Then the government will use the money from the housing levy to pay these developers. Then the low-income earners buy the houses from the government. So how will it create jobs? It's simple. Businesses in the building and construction industries will require labor. Whether engineers, architects, juakali artisans, the builders, or mama wa kupika lunch at the construction site, it's a whole ecosystem. So according to the logic of the government, not only will the affordable houses be constructed, but also many businesses will come up, therefore creating job opportunities as a result. And just for the record, I'm not talking about whether the program is effective or efficient or if the timing is right. That's a whole different debate altogether. And I spoke about this at length in a previous video, and I said that this affordable housing issue isn't about houses, it's about unemployment and unsustainable jobs. Then another program is the Kazintani initiative that was launched in 2020, and it was designed to cushion vulnerable youth from the effects of the pandemic, and it was targeting the youth in informal settlements. So these young guys did a lot of work like collecting garbage, clearing drainages, cleaning the streets, planting trees, or improving and rehabilitating social and public facilities. So a lot of these programs face a lot of criticism because people are like, isn't there another alternative that is more decent? But unfortunately, in an economy where unemployment is the norm, kazi ni kazi, or work is work, people are forced to settle for anything because unemployment as a condition takes away people's power to make choices. Then another example is with the universal health coverage program. The government is taking a new approach with public health insurance or the social health insurance fund. So this requires a video by itself, but let me give them time to settle. But anyway, the government is approaching a more holistic and very ambitious approach to public health insurance. So previously the focus was on cure or curing disease. You get sick, NHIF covers your medical expenses. Whether or not NHIF works depends on who you ask. But now with universal health coverage, the government is focusing on preventing diseases because it's cheaper to prevent than to cure. And by doing this, the government anticipates that funding public health insurance will become much cheaper. So they've hired, or they plan to hire, about 100,000 community health promoters to go into all the 47 counties. So So these guys will be going to households and they'll be trained to do basic health screening, to promote health. They collect health data and refer you to a hospital if need be. So through this program as well, the government intends to hire about 20,000 healthcare workers, so creating jobs in the process. Now, one major problem of this government is they have a problem with keeping their word. Great initiatives, but they never learn their lessons. So if they're not careful, they'll be repeating the same problems that NHIF had, but at a much bigger scale, because this intervention is bigger and more complex. And obviously, corruption is going to be one of the biggest challenges. Now, number two, the government is promoting manufacturing in the private sector. So any business that is in manufacturing, more often than not, creates an entire ecosystem around it. So just from one business, many other businesses can come from it. For example, supermarkets or businesses who go in downtown or Nyamakema, they are in the business of selling what has already been produced. So they themselves barely produce anything. So manufacturing creates a ripple effect in the economy just because of what I've explained, that many businesses can come up just because of one manufacturing business. And in the process, many jobs are created. And yeah, that's the path that many economies have taken as they develop. But unfortunately, over time, technology has caused people's jobs to become redundant. And in fact, there is a concept being discussed called the universal basic income, where people will be getting a stipend to enable people to survive without employment, as technology continues to disrupt things. But in this fallen world, there's more than meets the eye. They create economic problems, then they give you a solution. I don't think that the way to fix the world is to make it uniform. And in Africa, we haven't even hit the basics of economics before we can even start talking about technology taking over. We have barely scratched the surface when it comes to our potential. Anyway, so back to Kenya, you've had Buy Kenya, Build Kenya initiatives, or using raw materials from Kenya instead of importing raw materials, then also promoting products that are made in Kenya. So all these efforts are targeted towards promoting manufacturing. Even recently, Ruto opened up a phone assembly plant in Machakos. So the ideal situation in an economy is that you distribute labor to the areas with the greatest need. Like in Kenya, some of the areas being given priority is agriculture, value addition of animal and plant products, and textile industries. And you've also heard of the debate to ban the import of second-hand clothes or mitumba and shoe imports. The logic is that we'll protect the ecosystem around the manufacturing of shoes and clothes here in Kenya, and as a result, the local jobs and businesses in that industry will be protected. Just a disclaimer, that's an example. So anyway, there's a lot of money being poured into manufacturing so that the businesses can expand, because many people are doing production but at a very small scale. And if they remain small, they will not grow fast enough to absorb enough people. And without going into too many details, established companies have advantages that smaller companies do not have. So anyway, the policy recommendations for manufacturing are many. Some are included in the Big Four agenda, Kenya Vision 2030, and the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto. And let me tie this in with foreign direct investment, or FDI. So foreign direct investment is basically getting people from other countries to come and invest here by starting their own companies, or collaborating with locals, or investing in local businesses, or franchising and licensing. And business needs money to start, to sustain, and to grow. And as they do this, jobs will be created in the process. So FDI in a nutshell is getting people to come and invest a considerable amount of money in another country. And to facilitate this, sometimes governments can make agreements with one another. Uhuru did that with China to a point that Chinese citizens even started hawking here, even begging. And the search for FDI is also the reason why Ruto says he's been traveling so much. But all in all, manufacturing and encouraging foreigners to come and invest in Kenya is not enough to create jobs. The business environment has to be favorable for those business to be profitable and sustainable. And in Kenya, the business environment is currently very hostile because we have very unpredictable and unreasonable tax laws. The currency hasn't been stable, a rising cost of energy, both electricity and fuel, and the government has also been increasing fees to access different public services. And also getting licenses and permits shouldn't take a very long time, and information should be easily accessible. Then also the nature of a government's actions also matter, like is there rampant corruption, is the justice system independent and dependable, and the level of the government's debt. So all these things normally affect the business environment. Then the other side of FDI is that unfair competition can come up because he who has the money does the talking. Since the foreigners are the ones bringing the money into the country and the government is desperate, the agreements can end up benefiting the other country more. Obviously, it's impossible to have an agreement that's absolutely 50-50, but surely if one country is receiving just 20% of the benefits and the country bringing the FDI receives 80% of the benefits, that's definitely an unfair agreement. And then again, the government can also grant them tax breaks, which they don't give to local companies. These foreign companies do some creative accounting to make sure they return the profits back to their country. They also do creative accounting just to make sure they don't pay taxes here. And all these things give them an unfair advantage over local businesses in the country. That's why Chinese traders and the Nyamakema traders were at war during Uhuru's time, because the Chinese were selling the same products as Kenyans, but at a much cheaper price than the Kenyans because of those government-to-government agreements. Anyway, I don't want to dwell on this, but I did a video about this a while back. So click on the link that appears above if you want to watch it. Then number 3, the government has really been promoting self-employment, and it's been giving individuals a chance to do business with the government. So self-employment can take the form of doing business in the private sector or supplying goods and services to the government of Kenya or to other governments. So here we call them entrepreneurs, and these are the guys that I will focus on in this video. Now this strategy really thrived, especially in Kibaki's government. Now during Kibaki's time, the economy was performing fairly well. Disposable income was flowing, and financial institutions had confidence in the LPOs of government. Because of the confidence they had, they were willing to finance the people who were doing business with the government. So there was access to capital. And the banks were confident with the government, especially because the government paid their invoices on time. Now the effect of that is that unemployment reduced tremendously, and the economy grew, and some people were literally making a living off tenders. Then came Uhuru's government, where things were flipped upside down. The government still pushed for people to create jobs, job opportunities for themselves. Uhuru even launched a program called the Access to Government Opportunities Program, where 30% of government procurement opportunities were set aside for women, youth, and persons with disabilities. And this is without getting into too many details, Uhuru's government was borrowing too much that we know, and they even borrowed a lot from local banks, and they interfered with the lending rates. However, since banks are also in business, they decided that it's better to lend to the government than to lend to businesses in the private sector. And on top of that, both the national and county governments had a reputation for not paying their suppliers on time. And by on time, I mean they were taking years. Then, coupled with many other factors like high taxation, a high cost of living, and a difficult business environment, led to a decline in disposable income, which also led to very, very high unemployment rates, because businesses were shutting down while others were downsizing. And that is how we ended up where we are today as a country and our economy. Now it's great that the government creates job opportunities through tenders, but they're shooting themselves in the foot by not paying their suppliers on time. And also, as people become more creative to generate fraudulent invoices. The process to get paid unfortunately becomes complicated and long. I even hear that some government officials intentionally misplace documents so that they don't have to pay the suppliers, probably because the government released money for a certain project or supplies, then the public officers responsible for it ended up stealing the money. Yani people follow up their payment for years. And by the way, there are some people who've gone bankrupt, while others have been auctioned because of doing business with the government. And guys, remember that doing business with the government ideally should be a safe investment. So on one hand, the government, yes, is enabling people to become self-employed, but on the other hand, they're also killing those same businesses that have created employment opportunities for people. Then another challenge that has been recorded with the AGPO program is that instead of women, youth, and persons with disabilities benefiting from it, other people that don't fall into these categories take advantage. On paper, it says that the owner of the company is a woman or a youth or a person with disabilities, yet the real beneficial owner is a man who is not a youth and is not a person with a disability. Then number 4, the government provides grants to businesses to promote self-employment and to support and grow small industries. And on top of that, they offer many accelerator programs to equip people with different skills in different areas. Now, some of these programs are free and some are conducted by the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, others by the National Industrial Training Authority, others by NYS, and many others. So these programs target either job seekers or business owners. The only barrier is that you would need a computer or a smartphone and the internet. So there are many affirmative action programs and funds being channeled to fund small businesses, especially for the youth. So there's Uwezo Fund, Youth Fund, the Hustler Fund, and others like the Kenya Youth Employment Opportunities Program that offers training, gets you internship opportunities, plus also has different forms of funding. And there are also many other funding opportunities from development finance institutions and government to government partnerships. So ni wewe uangukie. And all these, I say, great initiatives, but I will keep repeating that the business environment is everything. Pouring money where there's a tough business environment is like trying to fill a bucket that has holes all around it. Unfortunately, even for some of these funds, there have been allegations of corruption and mismanagement of the funds. Then number 5 is the export of labor. So labor export just means people leave Kenya to go and look for job opportunities abroad. And the government is making deals with other governments to make this possible. So the most popular one is domestic workers going to look for job opportunities in Saudi Arabia. I don't need to dwell on this point because it's straightforward, but there's obvious problems to this as well. So the issue of brain drain is one of them. Then there's the cases of Kenyans being abused while abroad. And another thing is that in the case of disasters or pandemics, sometimes the government takes a really long time before evacuating Kenyans. We saw a lot of that during the COVID-19 pandemic. And anyway, my point here is that even as they make these agreements for people to find job opportunities abroad, they also need to fix the country for the rest of us remaining here. Not sending people away just to take off the pressure that unemployment brings to the country without actually solving the problems causing unemployment in the first place. And then again, with the way countries normally just wake up and decide that they want to change the laws for immigrants, the ideal situation is that the people can come back and settle in their country without becoming a burden to the government and their families. So they can come back and it's going to be easy for them to find a job or to do business. And even for us remaining behind, we want a stable, growing country. But the irony is how the Ministry of Interior has a whole cartel delaying people from getting their passports on time. Yani, once again, the government shooting itself in the foot. So the government goes ahead to make arrangements and agreements for people to get jobs abroad, but the same government is the one hindering people from getting passports so they can't travel. Plus now it's even become more expensive to get a passport. Anyway, so number 6 is the government is really pushing for people to stop migrating from the rural areas to the urban areas. And this is because they would need people to stop coming to look for work in Nairobi, and instead they can find work in the rural areas or create opportunities for themselves. So there's more to life than white collar jobs. So how are they doing this? Number 1 is through devolution. The money that's given to the counties is meant for rural development. Now, one responsibility that county governments have been given is to develop their counties and to make their counties more competitive. Number 2, people are being encouraged to invest in other counties aside from Nairobi. And if I'm not wrong, I think tax benefits are actually being granted to people who invest in other counties aside from Nairobi, especially if it's to do with manufacturing. Then, despite the fact that Uhuru gave us very expensive roads, these roads have made many parts of Kenya become accessible. Lakini sasa tukazane na madini. But unfortunately, some of the counties have become engines of wastage, corruption, nepotism, cronyism, and all other isms. Yani, their corruption is on another level. Then also the county government and the national government are always at war when it comes to money. So the national government delays disbursing money to the county, while county governments also fail to pay their suppliers. Then last but not least, the government in 2021 changed the employment law and banned recruiters from demanding for clearance certificates. So before the law was changed, public institutions and even some private companies would require the job seeker to submit clearance certificates from KRA, DCI, HELB, CRB, EACC, and others. So why was this law changed? It's plain and simple. To get some of these certificates, you needed money because they had a fee attached to it. Number 2, how are you going to charge unemployed people to find a job yet they probably can't even afford to get those clearance certificates? So some people were even getting into debt just for the sake of these clearance certificates, because at the time it cost more than 5,000 Kenya shillings to get them. Then you go through all that hulabaloo to get these certificates, yet the job isn't even guaranteed. So what the law has done is that it has shifted that burden of doing background checks from the job seeker to the companies. So all in all, the government is really encouraging people to employ themselves and give them support here and there. But anyway, whether you're doing juakali or hawking, ama to gigs here and there, whatever your hustle is, I salute you. Bora hawibi. It's very unfortunate that sometimes it's the city council that harasses the people struggling the most to make an honest living in this country. So anyway, in my next video, I'll be discussing the current issues revolving around unemployment. So be sure to stick around for that. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, share it within your circles, and most importantly, don't forget to subscribe. As always, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Cheers.